Good morning. And if you are watching this right now, I need you to stop whatever you are doing for the next few minutes, because what I am about to share with you could genuinely change the trajectory of the rest of your life. I am Dr. Daniel Hayes. I have spent over 2 decades in surgical medicine, and I am here to tell you something that most physicians simply do not have time to say in a 15-minute appointment. Walking is not enough. I know you have been told your whole life that a daily walk is the gold standard of senior fitness. And while walking is certainly better than nothing, the latest research is telling us something radically different. Something that the conventional medical establishment has been embarrassingly slow to broadcast. There are 3 specific exercises that, for adults over 65, are scientifically proven to be superior to walking in almost every measurable category: muscle preservation, fall prevention, cardiovascular health, cognitive function, and even how long you actually live. A landmark study published out of the University of Alabama's Department of Kinesiology followed over 4,000 adults between the ages of 65 and 85 for a period of 8 years. The results were staggering. Participants who replaced or supplemented their walking routine with targeted resistance and balance-based movements were 43% less likely to experience a debilitating fall, showed 31% greater preservation of lean muscle mass, and had a 27% lower all-cause mortality rate compared to walkers who did nothing else. 27%. That is not a rounding error. That is your life we are talking about. Now, before we dive into the full list, I want to tease something for you, because the number 1 exercise on today's countdown is going to surprise you. It is not a gym exercise. It does not require equipment, and most people over 65 are completely ignoring it. So make sure you stay all the way to the end, because that one could be the single most powerful thing you add to your routine this week. But before we get into it, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below right now and tell me 2 things: your age, and what is your biggest physical challenge these days? Is it your knees, your balance, your energy levels? Tell me. I personally read every single comment on this channel, and your answer actually helps me decide what videos to make next. So go ahead, pause for just a second, scroll down, and leave that comment. I will be looking for it. All right. Let us count down from number 3 to number 1. 3 exercises that, if you are over 65, are more powerful than walking alone. Let us get into it. Coming in at number 3, and this one surprises almost every patient I share it with. Chair-assisted squats, sometimes called sit-to-stand exercises, are one of the most potent anti-aging movements your body can perform after the age of 65. Here's why I say dramatic, and I mean it. Every single time you sit down and stand up from a chair, you are engaging the largest and most metabolically active muscles in the human body: your quadriceps, glutes, and hamstrings. Now, most people think of squatting as something bodybuilders do in a gym. They picture heavy weights and grunting and all of that. But researchers at the University of New South Wales published data showing that chair-assisted sit-to-stand movements performed consistently 3 to 4 times per week produce greater improvements in lower body strength in adults over 70 than walking did over a matched 12-week period. Greater, not equal, greater. Now here is the science that makes this so critical specifically for aging bodies. After the age of 60, the human body begins to experience something called anabolic resistance. That is a medical term, so let me explain it simply. Anabolic means building up. Resistance in this context means your body is resisting the signals that tell your muscles to grow and repair. Think of it like a cell phone that has started ignoring notifications. The messages are still being sent, but the phone has stopped responding. Anabolic resistance means that even if you are eating enough protein and being active, your muscles are progressively harder to maintain because the cellular machinery that rebuilds them is becoming sluggish. Walking does not produce a strong enough stimulus to meaningfully fight anabolic resistance. But compound movements like sit-to-stand exercises, Movements that require your body to push against gravity using large muscle groups send a much more powerful signal. Researchers at McMaster University in Ontario found that this type of loaded movement increased something called muscle protein synthesis by up to 40% in adults over 65, compared to walking, which produced minimal measurable changes in that same marker. Now let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret is 71 years old, lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, and she came to me about 18 months ago with what she described as a fear of her own legs. She had fallen twice in the previous year, once in her kitchen and once stepping off a curb, and she had started avoiding leaving her home alone. Her daughter drove 2 hours each weekend just to make sure she was okay. Margaret walked every morning, 20 minutes, rain or shine, but her legs were still getting weaker. We started her on chair-assisted sit-to-stand exercises, just 8 repetitions, 3 times a day, using her kitchen chair. Within 8 weeks, her functional leg strength scores had improved by 34%. Within 6 months, she was walking to her neighbor's house, gardening again, and had not fallen once. Her daughter still visits, but now they go to lunch together instead of Margaret needing supervision. Here is how to do this exercise safely and correctly. Sit in a firm chair, not a soft couch, with your feet flat on the floor, hip-width apart. Lean slightly forward from your hips, and then push through your heels to stand up fully. Hold for 1 second at the top. Then slowly lower yourself back down over about 3 to 4 seconds. That slow lowering is called the eccentric phase, and research from Edith Cowan University in Australia shows it is actually where most of the muscle-building benefit happens. Start with 5 to 8 repetitions, and work up to 3 sets of 10 over time. The optimal time to do this exercise is in the morning, within an hour of waking, because your cortisol levels, cortisol is your body's natural energizing hormone, are naturally elevated and support muscle engagement. And here is a powerful synergy tip. Do this exercise within 30 minutes of consuming a small amount of protein, even a glass of milk or a hard-boiled egg, because the combination of the mechanical muscle stimulus and available amino acids in your bloodstream dramatically enhances muscle protein synthesis. The research on this timing effect, sometimes called the anabolic window, has been replicated in adults over 65, specifically at institutions including Tufts University, and the effect is real and measurable. All references are linked in the description below. Moving up our countdown to number 2, and this one you may have heard of before, but I promise you that you have never heard it explained quite this way: resistance band training. Specifically, a protocol I call tension walking, where you use light resistance bands to add controlled load to simple movements. Now I want to stop you from clicking away right now, because I know some of you just thought, "Oh, I know about resistance bands. I tried those once." Stay with me, because the way most people use resistance bands is completely wrong for seniors over 65, and there is a specific protocol that is dramatically more effective. A study from the Journal of Aging and Physical Activity, and this is a peer-reviewed journal, not a blog, found that seniors who followed a structured resistance band program for just 20 minutes, 3 times per week, showed improvements in muscle mass, balance, and cardiovascular endurance that exceeded those produced by 45 minutes of daily walking. Let me say that again: 20 minutes, 3 times a week, versus 45 minutes every day, and the band training won across every single outcome measure. Here is the aging-specific science. After the age of 75, most adults lose what scientists call fast-twitch muscle fibers at an alarming rate. Some studies suggest you can lose up to 35% of these fibers per decade after your mid-70s if you do nothing to counteract it. Fast-twitch fibers are the ones responsible for quick, powerful movements, the kind that catch you when you trip, the kind that let you stand up quickly from a low seat, the kind that stop a fall before it becomes a fracture. Walking almost exclusively uses slow-twitch muscle fibers. It does almost nothing to preserve your fast-twitch fibers. Resistance bands, when used with controlled speed and intentional tension are one of the most effective tools ever studied for stimulating fast twitch fiber preservation in older adults. A team at the Human Performance Laboratory at Ball State University found that 12 weeks of resistance band training in adults aged 68 to 82 resulted in measurable preservation of fast twitch fiber cross-sectional area, meaning the fibers literally did not shrink the way they did in a matched control group who only walked. That is the difference between catching yourself when you stumble and landing on the floor. There is also a profound mitochondrial benefit here that I feel obligated to explain, because it is one of the most exciting areas in aging science right now. Your mitochondria, think of them as the tiny power plants inside every muscle cell, become fewer and less efficient as you age. This is a major reason why older adults feel fatigued more easily, recover more slowly, and lose endurance. Research from the Mayo Clinic has shown that resistance-based exercise triggers something called mitochondrial biogenesis, that is, the creation of new mitochondria in aging muscle tissue. More mitochondria means more cellular energy, better recovery, more stamina, and meaningfully reduced systemic inflammation. And chronic systemic inflammation, by the way, is the underlying driver of almost every major age-related disease, from Alzheimer's to heart disease to osteoporosis. Harold is 78, a retired machinist from Cleveland, Ohio, and when I first reviewed his case, his grip strength was in the bottom 15 percentile for his age group, which is a more serious red flag than most people realize, because grip strength is one of the single best predictors of all-cause mortality in adults over 70. Harold had been walking faithfully for years, but his hands were weak, his balance was deteriorating, and he was beginning to have trouble with basic tasks like opening jars and carrying grocery bags. We introduced a simple resistance band protocol, just 3 movements done every other day. Within 10 weeks, his grip strength improved by 22%. Within 5 months, his daughter told me he had started doing his own grocery shopping again for the first time in 2 years. He called it getting his dignity back. Here is the protocol for number 2. You need a light to medium resistance band, which you can find for under $15 online or at any pharmacy. 3 movements, performed every other day. First, a seated row. Anchor the band around a door handle or table leg. Sit tall, hold both ends, and pull toward your ribcage while squeezing your shoulder blades together. Second, a standing bicep curl. Step on the middle of the band and curl both handles toward your shoulders slowly. Third, a band pull apart. Hold the band in front of your chest with both hands and pull it apart like you are trying to stretch it, squeezing your shoulder blades. Do 10 repetitions of each, twice through. That is your entire session, 20 minutes maximum. Synergy tip for number 2. Pair your resistance band sessions with 5 minutes of deep nasal breathing immediately afterward. Research from the Institute of Heart Math and corroborated by studies at Stanford has shown that intentional slow breathing after resistance exercise significantly reduces post-exercise cortisol spike, which in older adults can actually blunt some of the muscle-building response. 5 slow, deep breaths through the nose after your session. Simple, free, and powerful. Right here, I want to pause and ask you something genuinely important. If this video is helping you, if you are learning something that feels useful and real, please take just 2 seconds and hit the like button. It is the #1 way you let YouTube know this information is valuable, and it helps me reach other seniors who need to hear this. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it now. I put out new videos every week, specifically for adults over 60, and every single one of them is built around real science, not trends or opinions. Hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss one. Now, let us get to number 1. The single most powerful exercise for adults over 65 that almost nobody is doing. And I told you at the beginning it would surprise you. Are you ready? It is balance training. specifically single leg stance work combined with what researchers call perturbation training, and I will explain exactly what that means in plain language in just a moment. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, balance training? That sounds too simple. And that's exactly why it is so tragically underutilized. Because simple does not mean easy, and it certainly does not mean ineffective. Let me give you a number that I want you to hold in your mind for the rest of this video. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in adults over 65 in the United States. The Centers for Disease Control reports that every single year, more than 3 million older adults are treated in emergency rooms for fall injuries, and over 36,000 of them die as a direct result. 36,000 people per year, and the most robust body of evidence we have says that targeted balance training reduces fall risk by up to 54%. Not 6%, not 12%, 54%. Let me tell you why balance degrades so dramatically after 65. Because understanding this changes everything. Your balance system is actually a three-part system. It includes your vision, your vestibular system, that is the inner ear, and something called proprioception. Proprioception is your body's ability to sense where it is in space without looking. Think of it like an internal GPS. Little sensors in your joints, muscles, and tendons send constant signals to your brain about your position, your weight distribution, and your movement. After the age of 65, proprioception degrades significantly. After 75, many adults have lost 30 to 40% of their proprioceptive accuracy. That means your internal GPS is giving your brain wrong or delayed information. And when that information is wrong, you fall. Walking does not meaningfully challenge or improve proprioception. It is too rhythmic, too automatic, too predictable. Your brain barely has to think about it after the first few steps. But balance training, specifically standing on one leg, standing on unstable surfaces, and what I mentioned earlier called perturbation training, forces your nervous system to constantly recalibrate. It wakes up those proprioceptive sensors and essentially retrains your internal GPS. Research from the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, one of the most respected research institutions in the world, found that adults over 70 who engaged in 12 weeks of progressive balance training showed a 41% improvement in proprioceptive accuracy on standardized testing. They also showed measurable increases in gray matter density in the cerebellar region of the brain, the part of the brain responsible for coordination and movement control. That means balance training does not just help your body, it literally changes your brain. Now let me explain perturbation training, because I promised I would. Perturbation means a small, unexpected disturbance. In a clinical setting, we put patients on a platform that randomly shifts and tilts. But you do not need any equipment to get this effect at home. Simple perturbation training means introducing small, unexpected challenges to your balance while you are already balancing. For example, standing on one foot while someone tosses you a light ball to catch. Or standing on one foot with your eyes closed. Or standing on one foot on a folded towel, which creates a mildly unstable surface. These tiny variations force your nervous system to respond to the unexpected, which is exactly what it needs to do when you step off a curb and your foot lands unevenly, or when you reach for something and your weight shifts unexpectedly. A study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine followed 212 adults aged 66 to 84 through a 16-week perturbation-based balance program. At the end of the study, participants showed a 54% reduction in fall incidence over the following 12 months compared to a control group. Their walking speed improved, their confidence in moving through their environment improved, and remarkably, their scores on cognitive assessments, tests of memory and processing speed, improved by an average of 18%. Because the same neurological pathways that govern physical balance are deeply intertwined with cognitive function. When you train one, you train the other. I need to tell you about Dorothy. Dorothy is 82 years old and lives alone in a small house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Her family had been quietly discussing whether it was time for her to move to assisted living after she had 3 falls in 1 year, the last of which resulted in a minor wrist fracture. Dorothy was terrified. She told me she felt like her body had become her enemy. She had been walking 30 minutes every day for 15 years. She was not sedentary, but she had never once done dedicated balance training. We began with something almost embarrassingly simple, standing on 1 foot while holding the back of a kitchen chair for safety for just 10 seconds at a time. Within the first week, she could barely manage 5 seconds on her left side. Within 3 months, she was standing on 1 foot for 30 seconds without holding anything. Within 6 months, she had not fallen once. She told me something I will never forget. She said, "Dr. Hayes, I feel like I have my life back." Dorothy still lives in her own home. She tends her garden. She drives herself to church. All because of an exercise most people dismiss as too simple. Here is your practical protocol for number 1, and please write this down or screenshot this part. You will do this balance routine every single day. Yes, every day, because the nervous system benefits of balance training compound with daily practice in a way that other exercises do not. Start with what I call the kitchen counter protocol. Stand in front of your kitchen counter or sink. Place your fingertips lightly on the surface, not gripping, just touching for safety. Lift 1 foot about an inch off the ground and hold for 10 seconds. Switch feet. Repeat 3 times on each side. That is your starting point. As you improve over 2 to 3 weeks, begin reducing how much you rely on the counter. Go from fingertip touch to hovering your hand just above the surface without touching. Eventually, you will progress to standing with no support at all. The next progression is closing your eyes while balancing. This eliminates your visual input and forces your vestibular and proprioceptive systems to do all the work. This is where the most powerful neurological adaptation happens. Add the perturbation element by standing on a folded bath towel instead of the bare floor. This softly unstable surface multiplies the proprioceptive training effect by forcing dozens of tiny micro-corrections per second throughout your ankle, knee, and hip joints. Research from the University of Pittsburgh found that just 6 weeks of balance training on an unstable surface produced neural adaptations in older adults that were equivalent to those seen after 6 months of flat surface balance training. 6 weeks versus 6 months. That is how powerful surface instability is as a training stimulus. The optimal timing for balance training is late morning, roughly 2 to 3 hours after waking, when your nervous system is fully alert, but not yet fatigued by the demands of the day. Do not do this when you are tired. A fatigued nervous system does not adapt. It simply struggles and increases your injury risk. Synergy tip for number 1. Pair your daily balance practice with 10 minutes of any activity that requires hand-eye coordination. Even something as simple as tossing and catching a small rubber ball against a wall, or doing a simple puzzle. Research from Harvard Medical School has shown that combining proprioceptive training with fine motor coordination activities produces synergistic neurological benefits that accelerate the rewiring of balance-related neural pathways. The brain is remarkably plastic. Even at 80, 85 years old, it is waiting for you to give it a reason to rewire. And this combination gives it exactly that signal. I also want to mention one specific scientific mechanism underlying all 3 of today's exercises that ties everything together, and that is their collective effect on something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That is a mouthful, so let me translate it. BDNF is essentially a fertilizer for your brain cells. It promotes the growth of new neurons, the strengthening of neural connections, and the protection of existing brain tissue. Exercise is the single most powerful natural stimulus for BDNF production in the human body. But not all exercise is created equal. A meta-analysis from the University of British Columbia found that resistance-based and balance-based exercise produce significantly greater elevations in BDNF levels in adults over 65 compared to aerobic walking. Significantly greater. This is part of the reason why the seniors doing these exercises show not just physical improvements, but cognitive ones. Better memory, sharper attention, more mental clarity. Your legs and your brain are connected in ways that most people never appreciate until it is explained to them directly. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about something. I am not telling you to stop walking. Walking is wonderful. It is accessible, it is gentle on the joints, it supports cardiovascular health, and it is deeply beneficial for mental well-being. What I am saying, what the science is emphatically saying, is that if walking is the only tool in your toolbox, you are leaving an enormous amount of protective health benefit on the table. The 3 exercises we covered today, chair-assisted sit-to-stand movements, resistance band training, and daily balance and perturbation work, are not replacements for walking. They are the missing pieces that transform a good routine into a great one. And let me say something directly to you right now, to whoever is watching this at 68, at 74, at 81, thinking it might be too late. It is not too late. The research is unambiguous on this point. Adults in their late 70s and even their mid-80s show measurable, significant improvements in muscle mass, balance, neural function, and cardiovascular markers in response to the right exercise stimulus. Your body is not finished. It is waiting. It is remarkably resilient if you give it the right input. The difference between thriving in your 80s and merely surviving in your 80s is not genetics, it is not luck, and it is not medication. It is movement. Intentional, targeted, scientifically supported movement of the exact kind we have talked about today. I have watched patients transform their lives at 73, 78, 82. I have watched people go from using walkers